Thank you for downloading or streaming this message from Emmanuel Church. We are one church with multiple locations, and we believe God wants to bless you right where you are. In a few moments, you're going to hear some practical teaching from God's Word that I believe will be inspiring and relevant to your life. First, though, if you haven't yet experienced Emmanuel Live, we encourage you to go to our website, eclife.org, to check out our service times and locations so that you can experience Emmanuel in person or through our online campus. If this message blesses you and you'd like to support the ministry financially, again, you can go to eclife.org and click on the Giving tab and choose Online Campus at your campus. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope this message will be an encouragement to you on your spiritual journey.
Well, good morning, Emmanuel Church. How's everyone doing today? Good to see you. You look amazing. Hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving. My name is Matt Scobell. I serve as the online campus pastor. Before we dive into all the things, let me give a shout out to all of our campuses watching with us right now. We got Seymour and Martinsville, Franklin, Banta, Garfield Park right here at Greenwood. Again, you guys look amazing. Online campus. We got E-microsites all the way down in sunny Sarasota, Florida, all the way up in Purdue. Purdue is gloating right now because they beat RIU, but it's no big deal. Well, we're glad that we got some Purdue fans. We're so glad you're here. If you are new with us, a special shout out to you. If you're like, I like this place is all right, you're going to love it next week. Pastor Danny, he's with his family this week, kick off that brand new teaching series, but can't wait to be a part of that. So how many of you had a good Thanksgiving? How many of you are still eating leftovers? Oh, yeah. Keep going back to Pinterest to find another turkey recipe. It's fine. Been there. But before we dive into things, let me just say this to start. So this time of year is the most wonderful time of the year, but also then it's the most difficult time of the year. I know, like me, there was someone missing at the Thanksgiving table. You're like, man, I wish they were there, but they're no longer with us. And so I just want to start out just in this moment just to tell you that you are loved deeply by God and by Emmanuel Church. So if you, to the widow and widower in this holiday season, you are loved. To the marriage that's just struggling right now, you are loved. To the person walking through tragedy right now, you are loved. To the single mom, single dad, you are loved. To the moms and dads, you're loved. To the men and women, you are loved. I hope that you can find a place of hope and healing during this holiday season when you come here. But again, you are loved deeply by us and by God. So let's dive in to today's message. So today is an Espresso Shot. And Espresso Shot is basically, I get to talk about whatever I want. We got some rules around here, not anything. But I feel like there's no more timely topic than this right here, contentment. I mean, come on. Think about it. Less than 48 hours ago, we were all part of a holiday that screams discontentment. And I'm not talking about Thanksgiving. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Black Friday. How many of you, this was you, be honest. Raise your hands. How many did some Black Friday shopping? No guilt. I love this lady right here. She's like, I'm touching it, so that means I get it. It's hilarious. So we're all sitting around the Thanksgiving table holding hands, all so thankful for all the things that God has done for us. And then the clock strikes midnight. Actually, I saw Big Lots. They opened at 7 a.m. on Thanksgiving, so there's that. But the clock strikes midnight. We're like, I got to go get that 75-inch television or my life is not complete. Some of you are like, Black Friday, come on. I'm just waiting on Cyber Monday. And this, I'm telling you, is what you're going to be waiting for on Monday, right there. That spinning wheel of death. It's just going to keep, you almost got that deal. So contentment, what is contentment? I think we feel it, but what is it? The staff and I came up with our own definition of contentment. It's the state of joy and satisfaction. I mean, that's almost like a soul word. Just like breathe that in. Contentment. Now, I want you to go back to the Rolodex of your mind, and I want you to think of the most content person you've ever met in your life. Think about it. Go back. Rolodex is those things that used to be on your desk for the kids out there. Go back. Who was content in your life? In my life, I think about my grandma Loretta. She lived in Marlow, Oklahoma, middle of nowhere. They had a KFC and a Walmart in her town. Her house value was probably less than $100,000. She died without a penny to her name, but man, was she content. She had so much love, joy, and peace. Like there was this non-anxious presence when you walked into the room. There's just all those attributes that come with contentment. Now, I want you to think of someone who's discontent, and don't be elbowing anyone right now, but think about discontentment, all right? What is that? Always striving, rude, bitter, angry. Like dis is the opposite of, but man, there's a big difference between someone who's content and someone who's not. See, me, I've struggled with contentment, my entire life. This is what I'm talking about. I've struggled with it ever since I was a wee little dude. Do you guys remember, I'm gonna take you back, millennials and Gen X. Do you guys remember these suckers right here, Pogs? My buddy Ryan brought some for me. He said they're from the circa late 1900s, okay? So to the kids, you guys remember Pogs? It's like little cardboard pieces, and you get a slammer, and you throw them down on top of each other. But I just remember I could never have enough Pogs. I remember my neighbor played the game, took all my Pogs. I was crying, I was devastated, but I always wanted more Pogs. So that was like my 8, 9, 10-year-old. Then I moved into Star Wars figurines. How many Star Wars fans out there? Big deal. I probably have $1,000 worth of Star Wars figurines. These little guys right here. I would mow a lawn. I'd get on my bike right down County Line Road, go to Toys R Us, and go buy another Star Wars figurine. But George Lucas, in all of his evil ways, just kept coming out with more, and I never had enough Star Wars figurines. That was middle school. High school, put away childish things. Now it's all about this, the clothing. Come on. This brand's still pretty cool. But I always wanted more Abercrombie & Fitch. So I was middle class, okay? So what I would do, allegedly, would go to American Eagle, okay, AE. I would shave off the bottom of the E so it looked like AF. The kids tell me AF means something totally else now, but we're going to Abercrombie and Fitch. From there, and then I got out of high school, then it was cars. So I had a Honda Civic, then I had a Honda Accord. Then I traded up after college. I got an Acura TSX. My car payment and my insurance was more than my rent, but man, was I cool. Then, let's see, after that, it was the job, it was the promotions. Like I always kept striving for more. It was the money. And then I got married. And my wife's like, you're an idiot. Stop being discontent. So, the secret to contentment, marry someone, calls you an idiot, then you'll stop being discontent. But what was that thing I kept coming back to over and over and over again? It's that word more. It's such a defining word right now in our culture. Just want a little bit of more. So I watched a movie a couple weeks ago. It's actually been out for about 7 years. It's a movie called All the Money in the World. It's a true story of a billionaire. His name's John Paul Getty. He lived in the 70s in Italy. He was the guy that figured out a way to get oil out of the ground in Saudi Arabia. So needless to say, he was loaded. Okay, so the story is a true story. Somebody kidnapped his grandson, and they wanted $17 million in ransom, and he wouldn't pay it. And so there's a scene in the movie. It's Mark Wahlberg, Christopher Plummer, classic scene if you've never seen it before, but I'm trying to get us geared up for Christmas at the movie, so this is Thanksgiving at the movies. Check out this scene.
They will do things to Paul that cannot be undone for any amount of money. We have to pay.
This simply isn't possible. My financial position has changed.
Really? 30 seconds ago you said it was a good day. I'm not all that bright, but I can multiply as well as you. With oil up as much as it was this morning, you have amassed another fortune.
Well, what if the embargo is lifted and oil were to crash? I'd be exposed. I have never been more vulnerable financially than I am right now.
Mr. Getty, with all due respect, nobody has ever been richer than you are at this moment.
I have no money to spare.
What would it take? What would it take for you to feel secure?
More.
If I were a doctor and I would diagnose what's happening in our society, it's that word more. See, I'm 38 years old, and what I figured out maybe in like my mid-30s is like you strive after money, but it just doesn't really satisfy. So you keep going after more money, but then you're like, that didn't actually fill that hole in my soul. So then what we start to do is we start finding discontentment in other areas of our lives. And this is just a list of my own life. Maybe it resonates with you, but there's more fame and more approval. If Mark Zuckerberg, he has made billions of dollars off of those two things right there. I'm just one post away, one reel away, one TikTok away from more fame, more approval. Man, if someone just says that I'm a good mom or a good athlete or a good artist, that right there is social media in its finest. more success, just one more goal, more power, more sex. I'm going to probably just generalize, but I would say that the reason that the porn industry is a $100 billion industry is because men aren't content with their spouse and single men aren't content with their singleness. Hello. More promotions. I just saw a statistic, and we always give Gen Z a hard time, but millennials, I saw that 61% of millennials plan on leaving their job in the next 12 months. Is that maybe a lack of contentment? Maybe. But in the culture in which we live right now, 2023, it's really, really easy to talk about more money. I mean, that's front and center in all of it. You can't scroll on social media for 5 seconds without another ad. Watch a football game, everything is selling you something. I get an email from the Financial Times, and it said, Americans made history. And I was like, this was like 3 months ago. I clicked on it, I was like, oh, that's fascinating. We made history with something. And it said, for the first time ever, Americans have surpassed $1 trillion in credit card debt. And you know what I thought? I was like, that's not too bad, $1 trillion. Because our national debt is, well, let's not talk about that. But so there's $1 trillion. So then I was like, I wonder what $1 trillion is. So let me just give you perspective for a second. If you spent $1 every second of the day, you spend $86,400. It would take you 32,000 years spending $86,400 a day to get to $1 trillion. It's a lot of money. Keep swiping that card. The average American buys a new car once every 5 years. So I bought a new car last December. Our little Prius was dying, so I went to Toyota. We got a car. That was December. January of this year, I get a phone call from Toyota. I'm like, man, I bet you they got a recall on this car. So I answered it, and she's like, hey, I just checking to see if you're in the market for a car. And I said, I just bought one off you like a month ago. She goes, you got to see the 23 models. They're unbelievable. And I was like, you're the problem, lady. And I hung up. No, I didn't. But I thought about it. Americans are 4% of the population of the earth. 4%. We have 90% of the storage units in the world on American soil. So we have so much stuff that we can't keep it in our house that we got to go buy a storage unit to keep all of our stuff. More money is a problem. So as I'm kind of doing research for this topic, I'm just being honest with you, I'm one of the most discontent people ever. So God's been doing a work on my heart for about 10, 15 years when I knew this was a problem. So I started doing some research, and I came across this verse in the book of James. James is the half-brother of Jesus, and he says this. He says, wherever you have envy and selfish ambition, I'm going to come back to envy in a second. I'm going to come back to selfish ambition. But selfish ambition, discontentment will always be about you. I'm going to come back to that again. But envy, selfish ambition, that's a pretty good summary of what a discontent life is. And then he says, there you will find disorder. And then this word, every evil practice. Every evil practice. So murder, rape, stealing, the Holocaust, genocide. Did you know right now there's an ethnic cleansing happening in Armenia? We don't hear about it because everything's about Israel right now. But right now, thousands of people are being displaced and killed because of this right here, envy and selfish ambition. If you look at the Gospel of Matthew and Mark, it actually says the reason why the Son of God, the perfect human, Jesus, was killed. You know what it says? You got to look it up. It says the Pharisees had envy in their heart toward Jesus, so they murdered him brutally. So here's what I want to do. I want to talk about, this is a really, really big deal. If you're raise your hand if you have contentment. If I walked up there, most of you would be like, I struggle with discontentment. Yeah. It's a cute little problem. No, this is a really, really big problem because if we don't figure this out, it's going to manifest itself in other bigger ways. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you 10 ways to be more content. I'm kidding. I just want us to just think just a little bit different. What if we just had just a different thought process when it comes to contentment in our lives? So in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, this is Solomon. He says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. So Psychology 101 says your thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to behaviors. So we got to attack our thoughts first. So as a man thinks, or he or she thinketh in his heart, so is he. So what if we just thought just a little bit different? So here are some thoughts that I have in my own life when it comes to discontentment. Right here, that one. I say it all the time. I said it to my buddy Ryan down here this morning accidentally. I say I want all the time. How about this one? It's not fair that I don't have that job. It's not fair that I don't have that car, spouse, house, beach house, name it. How about this one? I am entitled to. Woo-wee. It's a good one for this generation right now. In John Ortberg's book, Soul Keeping, write that book down. That's one of the best books you're ever going to read. That's your 24 reading list, okay? Soul Keeping, John Ortberg. In it, he said that the default mode of every single human being is entitlement. The default mode. So all of us struggle with this. And then what he says it leads to? An ungrateful heart. Like we're not thankful for the things that we do have. I am entitled to. How about this one? If I just had that salary. You know you've said that. Man, if I just made $60,000, I promise you I'll be content. So here's what I want to do. I want to attack these thoughts with a couple thoughts that Solomon gives us. So Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs. He wrote the book of Song of Solomon, married couples. You got to read that tonight. It's a great book. And he also wrote the book Ecclesiastes. So Ecclesiastes is basically the meaning of life. So Solomon, if you know a little bit of history, he was one of the richest people to have ever lived. Historians say that he was valued at $2 trillion. Like he had so much money, he had everything. God gave him that wealth. But he was also one of the wisest people to ever live. So we're going to dive in 5 verses in Ecclesiastes next 10 minutes, and we're going to think differently. All right, you ready? He says, then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbor. So most people, if you're sitting in a room, is like, nah, this isn't for me. Solomon, just pushing back a little bit, the wisest person ever lived, says most people struggle with this. Are motivated to success because they envy. That envy, at the root of it, actually is that God owes me something. God owes me. In 1997, Ted Turner, he gave $1 billion to the United Nations. A reporter, after he gave the $1 billion, goes, how did you feel giving away $1 billion? Like, was that not amazing? And you know what his response was? You got to look it up. It's fascinating. He says, honestly, not very good, because Warren Buffett, he's got so much more than I do. You're like, what? You just gave away $1 billion and you're still a billionaire and you can't even be happy with what you have. See, most people, rich, poor, we'll keep going. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. We're going to come back to this idea of chasing the wind. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. It's like this like pendulum swings in our society. It's like if I can't have everything, then I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to sit in my mom's basement, play Call of Duty all day, and I'm not going to do anything. It's like this weird pendulum. If I have to have it all, there's got to be a middle ground. He tells us what the middle ground is. And yet, better to have one handful with quietness. So other translations say tranquility. Like that's a beautiful word, tranquility, the peace. It's that joy, it's that satisfaction. Then 2 handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. I want to come back to this idea of chasing the wind. The wisest person who ever lived says if you live a discontent life, it's almost like you are chasing the wind. So let me give you an example. My buddy Cody, he's down here. You guys know Cody, he's Greenwood campus pastor, but he was also the guy that taught last week. So all of our campuses, Cody Johnson, one of our favorite campus pastors. Let's just say that we all gathered here at the Greenwood campus today. And you pulled up about 8:45, and you see Cody, and he's out in the parking lot, and he's got this jar in his hand, and he's got this lid, and he's just bolting up and down the parking lot, and you're like, what is he doing? I wonder what he's doing. He's pouring sweat. He's got a Philadelphia Eagles jersey on. As a Cowboys fan, I don't know why anyone would wear that, but he's running around, fly Eagles fly, and he's trying to catch the wind. And you walked up to him, you would be like, hey, Cody, you catching fireflies? Like, what are you doing? What if he looked at you and he goes, no, honestly, I'm just trying to catch a little wind, because if I catch this wind, I put it in here, I go to bed tonight, right when I lay down, I open the lid, wind blows in my face. It's amazing. You would do one of 2 things. You would call 911, or you would grab your little kids underneath your arms and you would back away slowly from Cody and you would run away and you would never, ever come back. That's Solomon's idea of chasing the wind. Does that make sense? So what if the next time those little thoughts come up into our mind, we just said this. We just said this out loud. Come on, that's just chasing the wind. Like, I want this. That's just chasing the wind. I'm entitled to. Come on. That's just chasing the wind. What if in this holiday season that we're coming up on, we just said that. Every time those feelings start coming up, we replace that thought with, nah, that's just chasing the wind. So here's what I want to do. I need a little audience participation, all of our campuses, e-microsites. I'm going to give you a scenario that may happen in your life over the holiday season, and then you're going to then say, that's just chasing the wind, all right? Ready? So here's the first scenario. First scenario is this Christmas morning, and you're on the gram. That's what the kids call Instagram. And you look at Instagram and you see your sister just posted this picture of their kids opening presents, and her living room looks like an Amazon distribution center, and you're like, I just don't do enough for my kids. You're then gonna say what? You're getting it. That's just chasing the wind. All right, let's just say Christmas morning you walk outside and your neighbor, Phil, bought his wife Alexis with the stupid bow on top of it. You know exactly what I'm talking about, that stupid bow. And you walk outside and you're like, I'm a horrible husband. I don't do enough for my wife. You're then gonna say, that's just chasing the wind. Yep, you got it. All right, give it a couple more. So you know you're getting this huge bonus this year, but like Clark Griswold, he got the Jelly of the Month Club. And you're mad, anger starts running up. And then you hear that your boss got a huge bonus. You're getting more anger. You're then gonna say, you're supposed to get this promotion in January, and they gave it to Chuck and said, Chuck doesn't even come in on time, and he works from home half the time. And you're like, that's mine. I deserve that. You're then going to say, okay, all right, good practice. That's just chasing the wind. All right, there's one more thought in the next two verses that I think may help heal this discontentment in our life. Let's keep reading. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's also meaningless and depressing. Solomon, you're a little depressing right now. The way to lift the room. But we got a guy, he's got so much wealth. He's worked hard his whole life, but then he has no one to share it with. And then he says this, who am I working for? I have never said those words in my life. I have never said those words, who am I working for? I have said, what am I working for? I've said those, oh my God, what am I working for? I've said, why am I working so hard? But I've never said, who am I working for? It's very, very interesting. The wisest person who ever lived, I think he gets it with this battle with contentment. And here's the reason why. The meaning and value of our lives are always tied back to someone else, not something else. I don't know about you, but in my life, I've had some old timers once tell me, you probably heard it before, hey man, there won't be a U-Haul following you in your hearse. You heard that before? So why do you keep consuming all of these things? We know that to be true, but then we go, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. What if the next time those feelings of discontentment start rising up within us, we just had this thought right here. Who am I working for? That's just chasing the wind. What if we said, man, who am I working for? Let's go back to those initial thoughts that lead us to discontentment. I want. It's not fair that I am entitled to, and if I just had. What's the common word right there? I. Everything comes back to you. You've heard coaches say there's no I in team, and I would say there's no I in contentment, but I will say there is an I in discontentment. See, I learned this lesson the hard way probably about 10, 12 years ago. So let me tell you a little bit of my story. So I grew up from around here, but I went to school down in Florida, Clearwater, Florida. I got my business degree in 2007. I got a job right out of college at PepsiCo. So I worked in the Gatorade Quaker Oats divisions. And so I was working there, and this is a true story. This is embarrassing, but I'm going to say it anyways. 18 months in, I looked at my boss, and I said, I should have been promoted by now, so I'm leaving. True story. Gotta love 20-somethings. They're fun. They're good times. So I left, and I went to go work for a company up in Norcross, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, called Mizuno. So if you play sports, it's like baseball and golf and running, volleyball, big brand, Japanese company. So I went to go work for Mizuno as a buyer planner. So what I did with Mizuno is I basically worked with the factories over in Asia and then brought the stuff. So I running apparel and running shoes and batting gloves and golf gloves. That was kind of my thing. Well, probably a couple years in doing that job, HR posted a job and they were hiring a part-time buyer planner for the South America division. And I was like, and South America was really blown up. If you ever been to South America, everything is about clothes there. They love their clothes. They love their shoes especially. So I was like, man, I want that job. I went into HR and I want that job. And they were like, oh, you're full-time, this is part-time, so probably not gonna work. And I was like, no, I want them both. And they were like, sure, go for it. So I took on both jobs, added another 15, 20 hours of my work to my schedule. And you're like, why would you ever do that? If I look back, just to pause the story for a second, if I look back on my life, I think that, so I have a really successful brother. Everything he's ever touched turns to gold. He's about 4 years older than me. He's a vice president of a company right now. He's done really well financially. So it's almost like I had to feel something in my life. Like I had to, like my brother's successful, so I need to be successful. So my dad looks at me and, like all the things, just trying to fill whatever hole in my soul. And it all came tumbling down for me emotionally in probably a couple years into the Mizuno job and maybe 3 or 4 months into this new job of working in South America. So I was flying down to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I was trying to get the market set up. And I remember coming home one Friday. And I was in my dining room, and my daughter at the time was Olivia. She was probably like 6 or 7. And she ran up to me, and she's like, Daddy, I'm so glad you're home. And then you know how kids are. They just say the things that just dig the most, but she was just being sweet. She goes, you haven't tucked me in 3 nights because you always get home after I go to bed. And I was like, it was like the gut punch. I was like, what am I doing? Who am I working for? See, like if you would ask me in that moment, like why do you work so hard? Like why are you always like extra hours coming home at 8 o'clock at night? And it was, do you know what the answer is? I'm just trying to provide the best life I can for my kids. You've said it. I just want to provide the best life I want for my kids. You know what my daughter would have said? I just want you to tuck me in at night, Daddy. And I couldn't go back to that time, but that was kind of like the one gut punch I needed. Like, okay, what am I doing? Like, who am I working for? During this season of my life, I'm trying to figure out faith. So I grew up in a very religious home, but I didn't. What we experienced here at Emmanuel Church was not my childhood. So I'm just trying to figure out faith. There's a pastor down in Georgia, very influential in my life, great communicator, not as good as Danny, but he's pretty good. His name is Andy Stanley, and he had a quote at that time. And I was listening to his messages every single week, and he said this quote right here. He said, the value of a life is always measured by how much of it is given away. And it was like the next gut punch. I was like, the value of my life is measured by how much of it is given away. No, the value of my life is measured in my promotions, in my money, in my stupid Star Wars figures. Like that is the value of my life. It's like this upside down kingdom living that Jesus talks about in Luke. It's like, you want to save your life? Well, you got to lose it. If you lose your life for my sake, you're going to find it. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, lose their soul? And I was losing my soul in that season of life. And so I think I figured out the secret to contentment. It's almost like this keystone habit. If you do this, then you will live a content life. And here it is right here. You got to give your life away. That's it. You got to make it about others. Go back. Remember I told you, think about the person who's super content in your life. Who is that person? Going back to it, was that not a definition of their life? Right there. Was that not the definition of their life? So here's my question as we end our time together right here. Who are you going to give away your life to? So discontentment, we know what that looks like. Contentment, that sounds really nice. Joy, satisfaction, love, peace. Like, I want that. Who are you going to give away your life to? Can I give you the answer to the question? I know I'm not supposed to because you're supposed to think. But if you're a parent, it's your kids. If you're a grandparent, it's your grandkids. If you're a teacher, it's your student. If you're a first responder, it's the person God puts in your path. If you're a follower of Jesus, it's the lost in our community. That is what life is all about right there. So what if right now, you leave here today, you're like, all right, discontentment, we know what that feels like. That's just chasing the wind. Who am I working for? What if that was your anthem that you kind of walked out of? A year from now, someone goes, tell me someone content in your life. And you were the first person they thought of because you're always giving away your life. Unless Jesus come back, you got 100% chance of dying one day, right? Your kids are gonna be at your funeral. You're gonna be down front. What are they gonna say? What if they were like, they didn't have it all, I didn't have it all, but man, they just gave away their life. They were super content with what God has given them. What would that look like in your life? Like, how incredible would that be? Some of you in this room, you're so talented, you're entrepreneurs, everything you touch, like my brother, turns to gold, but you got it all. You're missing something. You're like, what am I missing? Like, what if? So our mission here at Emmanuel is that we're on a relentless pursuit to see more people come to Christ and grow in Christ. Like, what if you were on a relentless pursuit of more, but not more stuff or beach houses or cars or promotions or likes or whatever? What if it was just more souls? What if that was your story? How incredible would that be? So as we end our time together, I talk about that hole in my soul. Like where everything inside of me was just striving for something. Like, well, I don't understand why when I try to fill it with something, it all goes empty after about 3 or 4 days. Like, I finally got the car, and you're like, someone dinged it in the parking lot. I don't care about it anymore. Like, I finally got the promotion. Oh, it's another 10 hours of work a week. Awesome. Like, but there's always something in us that always wants more. Where does that come from? Solomon gives us the answer in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. He says this is the previous chapter. What do people really get for all their hard work? Like, come on, what do they really get? I've seen the burden God has placed on us all, yet God has made everything beautiful in His time. And then He says this: He has planted eternity in the human heart. See, some of you in this room, you have tried everything to try to fill that hole in your soul. I tried for about 25 years. It didn't work. It didn't work. And then I met this guy named Jesus, and He changed everything. Do I still struggle with discontentment? Yeah, I do. But man, there's just something waking up in the morning knowing that you got a Father who's patient and kind, who fills that hole in your soul, knowing that nothing else can. In the book of John, Jesus says that He is the living water, that if you take a drink of Him, you'll never thirst again. Some of you, you've tried everything to fill that hole in your soul, and I'm telling you, the answer is only found in a relationship with Jesus. So the gospel, the good news that this is why we gather together, is that when we were at our worst, when we were chasing things and envy, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever, when we were at our worst, Jesus raised His hand and goes, I'm gonna pay that price, because a price had to be paid. And so maybe you're sitting in all the dots just connected of like, why can't I find hope and healing and peace and joy in this life? It's found in a relationship. If that's you, I just want to pray a simple prayer. So with every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's you right now, I just want you to say simple words: Jesus, I give you my life. If you're watching online, Jesus, I give you my life. If you just said those 6 words, I'm gonna pray a prayer. It's not the prayer that saves you, it's the posture of your heart. What you just said just saved you and guaranteed you a relationship with Jesus forever. Eternity with Jesus forever. So I'm gonna pray this prayer. Will you pray it with me? So Jesus, I'm coming to you right now as a sinner. I am broken. I've chased after everything, and none of it satisfies. But I'm asking you, Jesus, right now to come into my life and save me. I believe that you died for me. I believe that you rose again. And I believe that you're waiting for me in heaven to spend eternity with you. In Jesus' name, amen. When one person accepts Christ, all the church celebrates, and so does heaven. Woo! You made that decision to follow Jesus. Congrats to you. We have something for you. It's called a save box. If you text the word save to 65248, fill out a brief form online at our campuses. Just stop by in the lobby, pick up the save box. In it, there's a new believer's Bible, there's a coffee mug, there's some next steps in there. Make sure you text save online. Give me a little more information. I'll follow up with you this week. I can't wait to celebrate with you. Can we give it up one more time? Woo. Thank you for being a part of our Espresso Shot today. I'm going to pray over us, and then I'm going to dismiss to local teams.